to do this.
Install it on your computer and join the online sensation before we all murder you.
All right then.
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I rave and rant about board games, but usually more the latter. This is a new review for Mass Effect the board game from Mediphius Entertainment. It's designed by Eric Lang and Calvin Wong. It's been a long time since I've played anything by Eric Lang, actually, come to think of it. Although this may infuriate some of you out there, I have never played a single game of the video game version of Mass Effect. Sorry, I just haven't. I have never played them. I know they exist, I've been tempted to buy it, I know you can get the legendary version that has all 3 games in it and all the DLC and that, but I don't know if it's a game I would like. I don't tend to play a lot of these RPG action games. I prefer to just play the straight up action games. But there have been occasions, like say the Baldur's Gate stuff, although I still haven't played Baldur's Gate 3. You know, there's some of them down the line that I go, alright, fine, I'll play them, but my problem is commitment. I like games that I can pick up and play and just sort of play, do a nice short thing, and then I can put it down, and then if I want to pick it up again instantly, I can, but I'm not committed to and forced to. When you play RPGs, I find that you just have to keep going, and you need to get it finished, otherwise you'll forget what's going on, and then it won't make any sense, and it will drag and drag and drag, and it's like, alright, fine, let's just get it done. So I have this love-hate relationship with that genre, but this is the board game version, so okay, fine, let's jump into it and see if anything that I don't know about the lore makes any difference when I play this game, or can I enjoy it as a complete newbie and just like it for what game mechanics it is.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
So in Mass Effect, you are playing for a campaign of anywhere between 3 to 5 missions. As you can see, I've just finished one at the moment, which is why all the pieces are out. These missions consist of 3 main missions and anywhere from up to 2 loyalty missions, so effectively 3 to 5. The main missions will be dictated based on the path that you choose. So if I decide to do the 1C out of the first lot of missions, then after that I can do either 2C or 2D, and then depending which one I do out of those 2, I might be able to do 3B or 3C. So you can kind of go through your own path of missions, but the loyalty missions you can do in between the main missions for your particular characters. You will control a selection of 4 different squad mates, which I believe are from the main video game. You know, I'm sure they are, otherwise what's the point of the IP? But the idea with these is that each one has a crazy powerful ability on it, and if you do one of the loyalty missions for these characters, you can unlock one of those cool abilities. But as you go through each mission, you are fighting different enemies, either the Cerberus or the Reapers, and the scenario will have some objectives that you must fill out, and if you succeed the mission, then you'll get a certain amount of war readiness points, which effectively is just a way of saying how well you did in the game. Other than that, it doesn't really serve any other purpose, but you are trying to basically get through the 3 main missions and score a reasonably decent amount, you know, and not fail the critical missions, shall we say. What players will have is 4 separate squad characters. So they will always have, Commander Shepard in here because he's like the main character. But the other 3 can be picked from 4 different people. So I've got here Liara, who I wasn't playing, but then I've got Tali, I've got Garrus, and I've got my new MVP Rex over here. You know, you can basically construct your squad out of 3 of these other side characters and Shepard. And they even give you the opportunity to make Shepard a male or a female, and strangely enough they even put pronouns on these. Now, I'm all up for pronouns and stuff like that, that's all well and good, except this guy looks like basically a big slug monster. You know, slug monster in power armor or whatever, and it's got he, him on it. There's a time and a place, okay? He's a fucking alien from outer space, but I don't know.
My girls!
My antenna!
My Kajigger!
My gonopores! Look it up.
The main mechanic of how you will do your actions is dictated by a load of dice. So you will essentially have 12 dice that the person in charge of the round, which is basically the guy on point, will roll all these dice. And the idea is that they have various symbols either for activating various actions or movement around the map, or they might have stars which basically relate to a special passive ability that each character has, and if you roll the stars, this ability triggers and gets better and better. Each one has their own unique one. But what you have is you effectively get 3 actions per character in the round. So 4 characters, 12 dice, 3 actions apiece. The first player will have rolled all of these dice and decide what they want to do. So I'll allocate a couple to move. I'll move on the map. Okay, I'll do this mission action here, and I'm going to shoot this guy, and I'm going to use an enhanced action die to make it do double the damage or something. That for example. And then when it's another player's turn, they will be able to lock one of the dice that are there in case they really like the symbol on it. So it's like, okay, fine, I could really do with a triple move. I'll just put that one aside. Then they roll all the rest. And then, again, they will trigger their strategy ability, if they roll enough stars. But then from this selection, they will then do 3 actions. So I'll take these 3 and I'm going to allocate them as that, that, and that. And then 6 dice, and then 3 dice. But it's okay, because as you go through each round, this on-point marker will transfer to players. So if you're going last in one round, you will eventually go first, second, and third. But you must control all 4 characters, regardless of the number of players. If I'm playing solo, like I did, I have to control all 4 of them. If you have 4 players and each will control 1, but one way or the other is that you have 4 characters, that will never change.
Wingus, Dingus, listen up.
Once everybody's taken a turn, they will then flip over one of these hazard cards that's dealt to them at the start of the turn, and this will tell them to activate specific enemies or to spawn new enemies and such, and basically it makes the enemy do what they need to do, which is to shoot you and hopefully kill you. That is their basic mission goal. But there are also escalation cards in here that once they all come out and shuffle back in, it acts as kind of like a timer for the game. So yes, there are ways for you to fail each mission, but if you take too long, then the timer deck will run out and you'll lose the mission anyway. So that's kind of the crux of it. Each round you will roll these dice and you'll use these to perform actions, deal with the enemies, get the mission objectives done, and then progress on to the next mission. After you've done the whole campaign, you'll get a blurb basically telling you how well you did based on your war readiness score, and, win or lose. That's the way it is. We'll start with the components, and this game doesn't fetch too high a price point, but you actually get some decent stuff for it. Yes, most of this stuff is handled by tokens. The only miniatures in this game are your 4 squaddies. But let's face it, you don't really need a load of over-the-top miniatures for these sort of games. I like these spiral-bound books when it comes to, laying out maps, because they're usually big enough to have on the table. They tell you what you need to know. They've got the map, which is big enough to host all the tokens and miniatures on it. Why do you need tons of boards and tons of minis in that respect? But the one thing I really do like is that everything in here is dry erase. Yes, your squad sheet is dry erase, as is the campaign map, as is this thing. So you could actually, you are meant to check off the various objectives on here as you go through. You don't ever need to mark the map for any reason, but your person that you use has mission experience that you can put here. It's got the different abilities that you unlock that you check off. So, all of that is done with a dry erase marker. You don't have to do a lot of dry erasing or anything like that, but it just means that there's less that has to be taken up by redundant components like experience tokens, for example. It's good that I can literally just cross off a little circle on my sheet and that will do the job. Otherwise, the cards are pretty good quality. I don't think you would ever need to sleeve these hazard cards. It's not necessary. The rule books in general, they're well laid out. I didn't find that there was a lot of things that I had to, deal with FAQs on. There's 1 or 2 things, and these games do just lend themselves to the fact that you are going to ask the odd rules question now and again, but you've got a good icon reference on the back of here. You've got, another terrain reference and icon reference on the back of the campaign map when you're not using it for, the actual campaign bit, which is quite handy. But yeah, generally I found the rules to this to be pretty simple to learn. I mean, I literally just opened up the book, went through the setup, and played the game as I was reading the rules. And you probably could do this in a multiplayer session, but certainly solo, there's no real need for you to read all the rules and then get started into the game. I just proceeded as I was reading it, and I did pretty well, considering. By the time I was done with the first mission, all the major rules that I needed to know were all ingrained in my system, and then I could just get on with the other 4 missions without any problem.
Damn, I'm possessed. Wonder if I can play the accordion too.
The dice represent a nifty little puzzle in themselves, because there's not a huge amount of variety in what's on the dice. The exclamation mark can account for a lot of different activations. But I like the idea that whoever goes first has to roll all 12 of these dice and basically has all the options in the world and pretty much do whatever they like. But then as each player then takes a turn, the amount of options that they have is more limited. But the dice is not completely random, because you are at least able to lock a die on a particular thing before it's your turn. So if you know that, look, I critically need to move fast, so I need one of these triple moves, lock that, and then roll the rest of the dice. So you should always be able to do the most critical thing you need to do on your turn, but then what else you can do will be subject to the random gods, effectively. But it does lead you to consider, well, what am I going to do with, say, Garrus, who's going 4th this round? Garrus is only going to get the last 3 dice that re-rolls, so there's not a huge amount of options available, and there could be a chance that he doesn't get to do a lot. Well, where is Garrus' position on the map? Oh, Garrus has got quite a few people heading this way. You know, maybe we should go back him up, you know, just in case. You know, he'll be fine next round when he's got 12 dice actions, but for now, there's not a lot he can do, and if he doesn't get enough shoot actions, he's not going to be able to defend himself.
Oh, God, you're killing me!
There was certainly a lot of times when I was thinking, you know, well, I can do a lot with this character, but I need to also consider what to do with the character who's not doing a lot this round, and it made the dice puzzle just a nice little clever system. It's also simple to operate, and all your actions that you can do on your sheet have got very clear dice slots as to where they can go, but there's a limitation because, you know, I can only move this character twice. I could move Rex 3 times, but, you know, how many times do you want to move it around? Do you want to move to a door, unlock it, and then move again? Then, well, you need 2 separate move dice, and, you know, the dice that you roll and what actions that you have are certainly going to play into that, and I just like that little puzzle. I like the way your characters level up in this game as well, because firstly, there's a lot of cool abilities that you can unlock, and you might be able to unlock every single ability your character has by the time the game's over, like the campaign's over, but you know, you'd have to do pretty well for that, I think, not to mention use a lot of the bonus unlocks you get solely on one character, and that would probably tick off the rest of the players if you did that. But every character has got a selection of decent abilities, and that's even before you get into their loyalty missions. The loyalty missions are just downright overpowered, I think. Rex here in my campaign, shoot it 46 more times, allows you to resolve your shotgun blast twice with every activation. I got him this ability, and he just goes around killing just about every enemy he comes across. He's an absolute nut job. But your experience is capped in each mission. You can only unlock 3 experience, and once you do, you unlock a new ability. So you should hopefully be able to get 1 new ability every mission of the game, providing you kill at least 3 enemies. Now, I do wish that there was more ways to gain experience than just killing enemies, because sometimes you might get, you know, an enemy that's wounded by one player and then kill steal by another, which means that person gets the experience, whereas the person who wounded it doesn't. But also, some characters are just generally better at killing than others. Everybody can kill somebody. They're not completely defenseless, but Rex basically mauls through characters and gets his free experience pretty much like straight away. Whereas in contrast, someone like Tali's only got a short-range pistol and at times a fairly ineffective drone to deal a decent amount of damage, and has to get up close and personal to do any kind of damage, which means that as the enemies get harder throughout the campaign, Tali's ability to actually kill people and get a lot of experience is a lot harder. So I had to use a lot of the bonus unlocks on Tali, while everybody else was getting experience from just straight up being able to kill people. I kind of just would have maybe liked experience to have been dealt out in more ways than one. But, you know, it does mean that you are trying to spread the love with all the characters. You can't just have one person be the Lone Ranger and kill everything on the map. They need to be able to step back and say, look, you know, you need a bit of experience. Can you kill these ones? And I'll go do something else. Which is nice. It just stops maybe the alpha player going around and killing all the people that they can find, because it's not going to benefit them anymore as a result. A little small addition that I quite liked is that in most of these games you get hit and then you have so many hit points and then you die and then you're out of the round. Well, here you won't die, you will essentially be downed. Now the negative with this is that when you are downed you're not doing anything at all, which means until somebody revives you, you're basically just sitting there, you know, twiddling your thumbs for a bit, which is not amazing. But the idea is that if people want the free dice back that you've locked out by being downed, they're going to want to revive you pretty damn quick. You know, and Shepard cannot be downed at all, because if you do, you lose the mission outright. But what I do like is that each player has a shield and a hit point value. So they have hit points which have to be healed by normal sort of medikit means and stuff. But the shield is the first thing that goes down when you get shot at. And the shield regenerates every round. So you can afford to take a few hits depending on which character you are and how high your shield rating is. But once the shields are gone, then you start taking the proper health damage. But you might actually have a character like Tali, for example, who can only take 2 hits before she goes down, but has a pretty good shield. So it's not so bad maybe for Tali to take a couple of hits, because once you've taken a couple of hits, as long as that's all you take for the round, it'll regenerate by the time the next round starts. But I quite like this idea that you can play around a little bit with, like the puzzle of who's actually in the line of fire, and if, who's going to take the hit from this enemy who could shoot either one of us. Well, you could shoot either one of us, but I've got shields, you haven't. Hit it on me, I'll take the shield damage, not a problem. It's a small aspect of the game, but I just found it quite cool. It was just something a little bit different from other games of this ilk that I've seen before. There are a few negatives to speak of with this game, none of which are major, but they do get in the way a little bit. Firstly, the mission variety. Yes, you have the campaign map that says that you can go through, one mission here, then to any of 4 missions there, and then any of 3 missions there, and you've got 4 characters worth of loyalty missions to go through. So there is a decent amount of variety that will mean that when you play through it a second time, you could go down a fundamentally different route. But from the missions that I've played so far, I didn't find that there was a huge amount of variety in the mission design. A lot of these missions just seem to kind of rinse-repeat similar aspects. Now, there are some changes here and there. But for example, I went through, and I did on my first campaign, Mission 1A Through the Breach. Okay, you go around and you collect some loot tokens and go to a terminal. Okay, fine. It's the first mission, whatever. It's not that major. Okay, then I did a loyalty mission, and then when I went into Mission 2A, Missing Stair, the mission tells me, right, a squad mate on a hex containing the objective token can use a mission action to repair a power conduit. Remove the objective token, and then once there are none left, go on to the next bit. Okay, so fine. And then I got onto Mission 3A, and the first bit is, once per turn, the squad mate in a hex containing an objective token can use a mission action to overload a terminal. Move the objective token to one of the slots before... Hang on a minute, we just did that on the previous one. You've literally just changed the words reroute a power conduit to overload a terminal, but the mission is exactly the same. And in this one, you have to kill an elite enemy. Well, in a loyalty mission, I also had to kill an elite enemy. So, yes, there are a variety of different missions that you can do for the campaign, but don't feel like every single mission is going to be fundamentally different in feel. They're not really. I did find that there was a little bit of repetition along the way.
Well, that was pointless.
Now, normally when I talk about difficulty ratings, typically most games try to be too hard, too punishing, and so it's not that fun to play. I think this one actually has the opposite effect. I found it was kind of too easy. Now, the whole campaign just ends by saying, right, how well did you do with your war readiness score? And that's it. Which has that sort of feeling of when you finish the whole campaign of everybody around the table just going, yay, we did it. Yeah, it's kind of an anticlimax compared to something like the video game, for example, which probably has this massive epilogue to speak of and this huge epic resolution. Whereas here, it's literally, well done guys, you did the mission. Game over.
Is that it?
The challenge just felt like it dwindled a lot, particularly if you do the loyalty missions. If you just go straight through and do a 3-act campaign, basically, it will be a little harder because you won't have some of these overpowered loyalty upgrades. But if you go through and do the loyalty missions, and you succeed in those, 2 of your characters are going to have some bonkers abilities. Like I said, shoot it 46 more times turns Rex into a complete killing powerhouse. But some of these other abilities are also pretty damn cool. But if you do the loyalty missions, that kind of means that the final mission will be made easier as a result, because the difficulty doesn't scale up based on how many abilities you've unlocked. By the time you get to the last mission, you'll have unlocked most of the abilities that you've got, as long as you've spread the experience around a bit, because getting free experience for a character, if you know how to kill enemies, is done within the first few turns. It really doesn't take long, and eventually the weaker ones will get their free experience. It's just a case of how long through the mission it takes. You'll have a bunch of these abilities, and suddenly I feel like some of the game was a little trivialized. Yes, the enemies do get harder in the main missions, but that basically just means that they have slightly more damage and slightly more hit points. That's it. There's no other real change to them. And yes, they do get tougher, but then because you've got stronger, you are still sometimes going, oh, an enemy's just popped up, blam. Oh, another one's popped up, blam. It's almost like whack-a-mole at some stage. And some of the spawning of these enemies can feel a little bit cheap because they have spawn points on the various, on the maps there. And the way some of these hazard cards work is that they typically spawn on a spawn space closest or furthest away from your person. Well, because the map is quite condensed and there's a lot of these spawn spaces, you find yourself on a regular basis going, all right, I walk up to this one and kill it. Boof, there. Right, spawn right in front of you. Boof. Huh? come from? I literally just killed a guy there. Okay, fine. Bang. Spawn another one. Oh, for God's sake.
Oh, Shazbot.
They can spawn and sometimes still attack from there, which feels a little bit cheap. You know, it's not like I could prepare for somebody spawning right next to me and then being able to attack. That seems a little bit on the cheap side. They can't always do that. It depends on the order on the card, but it can happen. You know, these things do crop up. But yeah, they just sort of spawn randomly without really any thematic reason as to why they're spawning in these locations. And it does, as I said, give that kind of whack-a-mole feeling. Now, as much as this game is relatively smooth and pretty easy to get into, it's also fairly standard. You know, there's not a lot of different things here that are going to make you go, oh, you know, like, great. I mean, loot items that you can pick up during the game are basically grenades, medikit, and intel tokens, which can unlock more abilities for your characters. You know, it's basically like another form of experience that you find in loot tokens. That's basically it. That's all you find on the ground is those things. Nothing else. No other types of loot. Grenade, kit, intel. That's it. In terms of the enemies, you do technically have two factions that you can go up against, the Cerberus and the Reapers, but there's not a great deal of difference between most of them. I mean, all of them have some ability of shooting you, but Cerberus basically is just, you know, two of the guys can shoot you and one of them is a close combat trooper. That's about it. Whereas the Reapers have a couple of types who, you know, one can shoot you, one can move faster, and one can sort of pin you in place or whatever. So there's some minor differences between the two factions, but not a huge amount of difference. And you'll never fight more than one on the same map. It will be Cerberus or Reapers. It will never mix and match the two. But yeah, there's only really 3 types plus a potential elite when it comes to the Cerberus and the Reaper factions. So you start seeing the same enemies over and over again, and as such, you don't get new types of enemies when the game gets harder. You just get the same enemies again, except that they have slightly more hit points and are, you know, do slightly more damage. It would have been cool to have seen some harder enemies, period. Like, say, the XCOM game, where you could have some basic grunts as an easy thing, but then if you went into harder missions, you would get, like, some of those, like, the tall ones, or whatever they're called, the thin ones, and some of the big, you know, robotic drones and stuff. So you would actually get harder enemies, not just the same enemy, but a bullet sponge, effectively. And as a slight negative, the time length for the game is a lot more than the box will suggest it is. The box suggests 45 to 90 minutes. The book, the main rule book, stipulates you will play up to 5 missions, each of them taking around 45 minutes apiece. I don't know what planet they live on, or, you know, in this Mass Effect universe, where time moves at a different pace, but you are not playing any mission in this game in 45 minutes.
But your weak link is, this is Earth.
You cannot control 4 characters with all their dice actions and all those Cerberus, you know, all these hazard cards, and set up the mission and do the whole thing in 45 minutes. It's not gonna happen, people. It just won't. And if you've got players playing, then the game is gonna take much longer because you're gonna have discussions with other players. It says 45 to 90 on the box. I'd say it's closer to 90 minutes, kind of at least as a baseline. You know, most of these missions should take you somewhere between 75 to 90 minutes playing it solo, maybe 2-player. It could take longer playing it with 3 or 4, but, you know, let's be honest, I've not played it as a 3 to 4 player multiplayer. I've only played this solo. But, yeah, you know, you're not playing this in 45 minutes solo, so get that off the box, cross it out, and put in the correct time. So Mass Effect, the board game, is a fine game overall, and I have enjoyed my time with it, but it is a little generic in how it feels. You know, the theme doesn't really come through for me, partially because I've never played the video game, but also because it doesn't really matter if you have played the video game. You know, the narrative book that you have for reading little story elements does not actually make a blind bit of difference. They're tiny little blurbs like, "You picked a pretty bad time to go face down on me," Tail complains as he shoves Shepard's form behind some cover. "Chiquita, flash bomb. The mission ends immediately, blah, 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 blah." And it's like, they're just small little bits like that. You could have pasted any generic IP on here and the game would have functioned pretty much exactly the same. So I don't get any extra benefit from that. but it is a smooth game to play. It's easy rules, you know, very few occasions where I had to ask like an FAQ moment. The dice, you know, the components are done well. Good dice and good dry erase spiral bound books and that, I approve. You know, it keeps the cost point down as well. This is cheaper than most of these other types of games. The dice puzzle itself, nifty and simple to do. I mean, you've got choices to make as to what you're allowed to do, but also bearing in mind who's going first and who's going last. That has a big deal. There is an element of teamwork with, you know, people trying to combine their abilities together in order to, you know, succeed in particular areas. And obviously if somebody gets down, then the rest of the group has to pull together to get them back up. Otherwise you are pretty well hindered. So there's a good aspect of like gameplay here. But where this game kind of falters is that there is a slight bit of a repetitive nature to it. By the time you get to the end of the campaign, particularly if you've done the loyalty missions, you kind of rinse and repeating and spinning your wheels a little bit. Yes, you're getting more powerful reasonably quickly, and the campaign's not that long. You could play just 3 missions if you want, which is a pretty good length for any campaign, and if you want to make it extended, you effectively play up to 5. It's better than most games where you have to play like 12 or something ridiculous, which are way too long. This at least keeps itself to a nice length. And yes, 45 minutes is pushing it as a time length, but it doesn't tend to outstay its welcome for a scenario either. It just takes longer than the box says. The characters that you can have are pretty varied. They are pretty specialized. You've got long range, short range, close combat, you know, defensive, you've got utilitarian, you know, you've got, you know, various other cool aspects to them. So it's nice that you can vary these up. And because you've got, you know, you've only got like, you know, 3 squad mates that you can pick out of a possible 4 and different paths for the missions, there is a decent amount of variety in the fact that when you play this game a second, maybe a third time, you could have completely different missions to go through. And let's face it, you could probably just play one mission by itself and it would probably do just fine. But what this game kind of felt like when I got to the end is I went, that was good. I had a good time. I'm kind of done now for a bit. Yeah, this isn't one that I feel like I would like get out and play straight away. I finished the campaign and I was like, yeah, if I didn't play this for a few months, I wouldn't really desperately miss it. But when I did come back to it, I'd be able to do something different and I would still enjoy it again. It's not one of those games where I want to play it immediately because it was that good. This is good, just not that good. Giving it overall a 7 out of 10 and a seal of endorsement, I do think it is a decent amount of fun. And if you are into this type of kind of skirmish combat game with, you know, moving people on the map, shooting up enemies and upgrading abilities and such, with a bit of a cooperative nature to it, then by all means this one's worth checking out. It's easy enough to play solo. Yes, it's a bit of a table hog having 4 of these things out as well as the book, but it's nothing too bad. It should fit on most tables, and the abilities are not too difficult to track or anything. The dice, you know, trying to control 4 people at once wasn't really that complicated for me. It extends the time length a little bit, trying to deal with 4 characters, but I never felt like I was overwhelmed with rules or anything. It got pretty straightforward. So the game is enjoyable, but it just feels like maybe the IP is there to kind of attract people that are interested in Mass Effect. And yes, I grant that I have not played the video game, but I don't think if I had, I would have got any extra enjoyment out of this. This is basically a game that you get if you like a quicker, smoother, easier to operate skirmish style campaign game. You know, if that's the sort of thing you're into, then this one's definitely worth picking up and having a go with. You know, it's going to be cheaper than most of the rest. You know, it won't bog you down in loads of rules. It will just get you stuck into the action reasonably quickly with some cool powerhouse characters to control. But if you're looking to buy this because you are a Mass Effect fanatic and you love everything about the IP and you want to see a rich, immersive campaign, you're not going to get that here. There isn't really any story to speak of. The narrative bits are less interesting and less detailed than anything you would find in something a bit more credible like, you know, Brian Lockett's games like The Near and Far and that, or Sleeping Gods. They're just basically there to proceed the story. So, yeah, a good skirmish combat game with some nifty little mechanics, easy enough rules, some half-decent components for a reasonable price point, but not much more than that. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Don't forget to check out all the other review content I've been doing, or top 10 lists. I did a top 10 games not to play with noobs recently. By all means, check out that if you want a little bit of a giggle. And of course, you know, Essen is coming up, so I'll be doing Essen preview videos soon if I haven't already, and obviously I look forward to seeing you there. But also let me know your thoughts about this game. Am I missing out by not playing the Mass Effect video games? Do you think that your playing of the video games is going to influence you with this game or not? Have you actually played this game? In which so, let me know your thoughts as to whether you agree or disagree. So take care, and remember, regardless of whether you're a Mass Effect fanatic or not, it's still only a game. So bye for now.